Okay. Thank you everybody for being here with us. We invited for a talk and Q&A session Professor Kalina Stefanova from Sofia, and I'll give now the the board to Cristina Modreanu, who made this invitation from the part of our Center of Research, Janovics Center of Research in Screen and Performing Arts. So
thank you, Miruna. Thank you everybody for coming, and of course, thank you to our special guest, Kalina Stefanova. I've been for a long time. I wanted to have a conversation, or this conversation, or any theater conversation with Kalina Stefanova. Of course, I had sometimes conversations with her via her books. So thank you for coming today. Kalina Stefanova, I will say a few words about her for those of us who doesn't know enough. It's a professor and doctor, is the author, editor of 15 books on theater and criticism. 5 of them are in English, among which, of course, the most recent one, 20 groundbreaking directors of Eastern Europe, 30 years after the fall of the Iron Curtain, that she edited together with Marvin Carlson, and it was published by Palgrave Macmillan in 2021. This is the book we are going to talk about today. But more than these books that she wrote or co-edited, she's the editor of the first volume of Chinese plays in Bulgarian, the editor of the first anthology of Eastern European drama in Chinese, and the first presentation of Bulgarian theater in English, which was published by Routledge in 1998. She was a Fulbright visiting scholar at New York University, and has been a visiting scholar at the University of Cape Town, South Africa, Meiji University in Japan, the Shanghai Theatre Academy in China, and in 2016 she had the privilege to be appointed as visiting distinguished professor of the art school of Wuhan University, as well as a distinguished researcher of the Chinese Arts Criticism Foundation of Wuhan University. She has delivered lectures and led seminars worldwide, and I hope you all agree that that's a quite spectacular academic career. This culminating in 2021, as I said, with the publishing of this new book. And I want to ask her, of course, to first, before our questions, to say something about this book, how this book came about, and how who had the idea. I guess I have an idea myself who started this project, but please let us know about this book, and how did you work for this?
I came back. I don't know if you saw that I disappeared.
No, you were there all the time.
No, actually my connection was cut, so I reconnected, and I heard, the last thing which I heard, Cristina, was that I was in Wuhan. So that's what I heard.
Okay, so I was talking about your amazing academic career, and then I asked you to make a short presentation of the book, and the question was, how did this project start?
Well, I will do that, but I have to say that also, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's really a great pleasure to be with Romanian colleagues always. I have very good friends in Romania, and I very much enjoy reading you when I can read you in English or in Russian, because I have read some of Georges Manou's books in Russian, and I really very much adore your vivid style of writing criticism. Especially his texts are kind of a paragon for me to follow. And I have been many times to Romanian festivals. It has helped me a lot regarding this book because I have seen many shows there, both from Romania and from abroad. So really, I'm very, very happy. I thought that we were not going to talk about just about the book, but about new tendencies, etc. So I'm ready to answer questions about the book, and I thought maybe I could share with you some thoughts about new tendencies, which I have some things which I have noticed last year during the Theatre Fall of 2022. But to answer your question, and then I go to this what I have in mind to share with you. The book has a very long history because we knew each other with Professor Marvin Carlson since the beginning of the 90s when I was on a Fulbright as a visiting scholar at NYU. But we were just in correspondence, not having seen each other for many years. And in 2016, we did meet again, saw each other again in Shanghai. Then we had the privilege to be invited to be on the editorial board of the Shanghai Theatre Academy magazine, Theatre Arts, which is, there are actually two big magazines in China. Now there are many more, but then there were just two ones, very big ones. I mean, just two very big ones of the Central Drama Academy and the Shanghai Theatre Academy. And I happened to be teaching right then at the Shanghai Theatre Academy, and then they had some kind of a celebration, and they invited us. He was there and other colleagues. Erika Fischer-Lichter was there, and Professor Lehmann was there, the late Professor Lehmann. And so that it was some kind of an official inauguration of a foreign editorial body. So then I suggested to Professor Carlson that we do this book. So you see, it was 2016. And then we started trying with, of course, I first suggested we try with Routledge. It didn't work out because we didn't have enough women in. And then different other houses. And it was in 2000, if I'm not wrong, the end of 2018 or probably 2019 already, when we got a contract with Palgrave. But it was in 2020 when we had already delivered the manuscript. There were still some problems again concerning this quota. I'm not a politically correct person, so I don't understand these things. And well, finally, thank God, we got the book into the printing house. So in 2021, we had it. So this is a story, really a long story. It was a big fight. And actually the writing of the book was took much less time than everything else.
Yes, yeah, of course, it's difficult to publish with the international publishing houses. But coming back along all these years, you witnessed the new tendencies in Eastern European theater. So you chose some of the people who you consider, you and Professor Carlson consider that they are groundbreaking. But what would you say now about these new tendencies? Would you add something? And maybe you will go to your thoughts about our theme today.
To answer your question, actually we were thinking about including many more people, but in the end it didn't work out because it would have been a 500 or 600 pages long volume, so it would have been impossible. And that's why last year, when I was privileged to be a guest of the same kind of series at the National University in Bucharest, I said, maybe we should have a second volume so that we can add everybody else who has been already making changes on the face of Eastern European theater, since we chose those people who in the first 30 years after 1989 have been the foremost groundbreaking directors. Of course, there are many more, and these are not the great directors only, because there are so many great directors. We cannot put all of them in. Neither is there any quota, national quota, not at all. It's just those who made a very big change, really groundbreaking directors. And of course, meanwhile, a lot of other directors have started leaving a very significant trace in Eastern European theatre. What I wanted to share with you today is something which is based only on what I have seen last year. If you allow me to do this. Last year, of course, we didn't travel a lot, but I had the privilege to go to Pilsen again, a festival which has opened my eyes for a lot of new directors, new companies, new type of shows, etc. And for the first time, I went to Bitev. So these two festivals, and I saw quite a lot of theater in Bulgaria as well, quite a lot, which is not very typical for us, foreign theater, or theater created by foreigners in Bulgaria. For instance, for the first time last year in Bulgaria did come the show The Dead Man Comes for His Mistress, which by Lorenzi, Ernei Lorenzi. I'm sure you have seen it in Romania. And I have been showing it to my students since 2014 when I saw it in Maribor. And I fell in love then with Lorenzi, although I had seen other shows by him before that, but it was the show which made me fall in love with him, and then the Iliad. And he came to Bulgaria to create the show at the National Theatre, Orpheus. And we also saw shows created by the Russian director in exile, Timofey Kulyabin, who created Nora by Ibsen. And as recently as 10 days ago, we saw another show by him with John Malkovich and the Lithuanian actress, The Solitude of the Cotton Fields. And now Declan Donovan is gonna direct in Bulgaria. As we say, the new name of the National Theatre in Bulgaria is International Theatre of Bulgaria. But the other very good thing, a big change at the National, is that some of the shows of Alexander Morfov, which were taken off stage now, are back, because he is the most, the really groundbreaking director, known very well outside of Bulgaria and loved by our audiences. So it's wonderful that his shows are really back. So I would like to base on these shows some kind of, to share some kind of thoughts connected with something which I call, and now I'm gonna share just a title. Just let me find it. Do you see it now? Do you see it, right? I call it Entanglement of Imaginations and Physiology, Illustrativeness on Stage, or it could be put another way, Physiology, Illustrativeness on Stage versus Entanglement of Imaginations. Why I prefer the first title? Because because I'm very interested in quantum physics, and I use entanglement in the way it is used in quantum physics, like entanglement of different particles which are very far away, but they have something in common and they're connected. To me, and this is actually the Dead Man Comes for His Mistress that made me start thinking about this in comparison with other shows. It is kind of the closest the theater piece could get to an experience which we have usually outside of stage. But when somebody is telling us a story and there are the only few of us, a close circle of people, or just one person, a tete-a-tete, and you have this experience when the very experience, not the story, the very experience becomes larger than the storyteller and the story recipients, kind of then engulfs them and transports them in another world, in an invisible world, where they're connected with their imaginations. And their imaginations crisscross and they get entangled. And this is a new territory of entangled imaginations, which we belong to it, not with our bodies, with our minds, with our imaginations. And this territory gets larger and larger via the belonging of more and more people to that kind of retelling of a story, which a theater piece, I think a great theater piece, is exactly what it does with us. So when I was showing this dead man comes for his mistress to my students for the nth time, and now they saw it alive and they're so infatuated with it. And seeing also Iliad, I think it is that kind of quintessential intimateness, which you can feel not on a body level. You feel it on some kind of other level, which is connected with the soul, the spirit, etc. And Jernei Lorenzi, I think, has the core of his talent, to me, consists of this skill to create an interplay between the static body, the static physical body, and the dynamic of the story, the intenseness of the music. For instance, this dead man comes for his mistress. These 9 people who just sit and play music and tell the story, and we sit, and all of us are static. And this static, the big static body of the storyteller with 9 heads, and us with so many heads. So there is a feeling of an implosion is going to happen any moment when the tenseness of the music and the dynamic of the story becomes so huge. And then he makes somebody stand up, stop playing the music, say something rather than sing together with talking. Or he changes the genre, he goes into grotesque. So, and there is this outlet of the energy, and then it goes again and again. So his aim to me is not to create a culmination, but to create a more stable type of otherworldly reality of our crisscrossed, entangled imaginations, where we dwell. We become dwellers in this other type of territory. And in the Iliad, it becomes even more palpable, because that territory of entangled imaginations already consists of the imagination of the mankind, the Western mankind, because this is an arc story. And all these people who have been recipients of this story throughout the ages, their imaginations are still in that big territory. And it's a huge territory of entangled imaginations. And especially Lorenzi put some kind of passwords in his shows. For instance, in the Iliad, this tapping on the mics, which was to me a stroke of genius, without any multimedia, without a lot of real instruments, apart from the harp and piano. With this tapping, it's some kind of a password way, which brings you back to that territory, because it creates the noise of the war, the rattle of the hooves of the horses, etc., etc. So it's a password, as well as a password is the final song. We will die tomorrow. The life is what we borrow, and in the Iliad, he touched upon 2 very topical contemporary issues. The issue of making choice. When Leto tells Achilles that he has a choice either to live a long life but without any fame, or be very famous, immortally famous, and have a short life. And very appropriately to our days, sitting in front of this mirror, like a dressing room mirror, he chooses the fame. And then another thing which is very important, because I want to make a comparison between Orpheus and the Iliad. He creates the reality of the war, of violence, of that temptation of anger, which leads us to an urge to revenge, vengeance, then outrage, then murder, and that kind of killing, which becomes also killing of the soul. And we didn't see anything, any real violence. We saw dances of trance dances of one and the same actor. And then the beating on the shield by Aeschylus when he kills Hector, and then the beating on that corpse. And when he starts beating the corpse, the animal corpse, I think it's not only Hector who is dead. Achilles too is dead because his soul is dead. So when we went with such kind, it was the most anticipated show in Bulgaria, Orpheus. We expected to see something of that kind of rank. And what we saw in the beginning was promising to be an upgrade of the Iliad. We again had the sitting actors on chairs, with the exception of one very mighty actors of ours reciting the Iliad. We had again the tapping, but on a piano by Eurydice. We had the material of the Iliad. But what was the astonishment, actually being taken aback, when things started becoming very physiological and very illustrative. That's why I put this physiology and illustrativeness in the title. Because what happened after Vladimir Penev, one of the mightiest actors of the National Theatre, starts reciting the Iliad, alongside with this, another actor undresses a third actor until his waist, puts him on a board and ties him with tape. It's like in a B-rated psycho thriller on television. Puts a mic nearby his mouth and starts pressing his stomach, closing his nose, his eyes, so we can hear the very painful breathing of the victim. He's the victim who is there, and the executioner very perversely cares for him. Of course, on the stage there is a screen. Also something which is totally unnecessary because it doesn't enrich, it doesn't enhance the theater. But a photo is taken with the executioner and the victim, and it's put on the screen. And many more items are on stage. It's a production of manliness, which witnesses that Lorenzi has succumbed to the temptation of manliness, not being able to make a choice what to put there and what to throw away. So then that executioner takes a big piece of meat and puts it on the chest and the stomach of the victim. And there in that meat, he starts sticking arrows, spears. And of course, when there is no any more space, a photo is taken of him, put again on this screen, and there is a big meat grinder. There they put raw meat and they have bloody hands, and we have again an illustration. We don't need all of these things. It's enough to listen to the lyrics of Omer and being rendered by Vladimir Penev. But the pinnacle of this physiology and illustrativeness is two songs later, because the scenes are divided into songs, and the names of the songs are put on the screen. And sorry? No, because I heard somebody.
So everybody to close the mics, please.
Yeah. So several songs later, after we have already met with Orpheus, Orpheus is totally an underdeveloped character, also staying just physically on stage, nearly not talking, but not because he's singing. No. And several songs later, when Eurydice is already dead, one of the best actresses of our National Theatre puts medical gloves and unfast to us, starts telling us how on the second hour, this and this part of the body starts rotting. On the third hour, that and that kind of spot appears on this and this part of the body. In meticulous detail, then another actress takes off from her and continues this detailed description of the rotting of the human body, of the decay. It continues for nearly 10 minutes. It's awful. It's so disgusting because it's as if we are in a morgue, as if we're students of pathoanatomy, and we listen to all this. And at this point, I think it's totally inadmissible such a thing, because at this point, a lot of people start leaving. There are people who have brought children with them, because Orpheus is a very important character for us. We believe that he was in Rhodope mountain. This is a myth which is studied from early on. So Orpheus is something which people would take their children to. Or people may have lost dear ones, etc. So I mean, it's not easy to listen to this. Moreover, it's something which is rendered by two very good actresses. So it's very difficult for you to not listen to it, to not see all the details. But this kind of physiology continues during the second part, when Orpheus is nearly tortured again in the hell. And I was thinking, when I was looking at this type of very similar to a psycho-thriller movie, I was thinking about something which an American critic told me when I was doing my research in American criticism. He said that Clive Barnes, the critic who told me this, and it is in one of my books, Bill Henry III, who is the late Bill Henry III, he told me about Clive Barnes, who used to be a long-time critic at the New York Times, and he said that everybody was very worried when television was created, what would be the effect on theater. And he said in the end, it turned out to be very beneficial, because the theater got rid of all the unnecessary, untheatrical stuff which went to television. All the fluff which was not enriching theater went there. Theater actually gained from it. So I was asking myself, what does this show, what the theater gains from this physiology? To me, it does not gain anything. It wants to become some kind of a psycho-thriller. And I remember very well a Romanian production of Silviu Porcorete, the cousin of Pantagruel, if my memory is not faulty, exactly the title, which I've been showing to my students for nearly 20 years now. And there again, you had this eating of people by people, but it was a metaphorical thing. It was yes, there was this bread, etc., but it was contrasted by the vivacity of the ritual of making bread, etc. So it was a metaphorical show. Here, there was no metaphor. It was mere physiology, nothing else. I think that when there is that kind of physiology, that kind of illustrativeness, we do not get any access to other worlds. Our imaginations are not invited there. It's only physical. It's nothing else. And it does not allow us, does not invite us to get into, to experience the feeling of belonging. Rather than this, it invites us to fear, to get angry that we have to finish in this way, that it's the end of life. Well, I was actually thinking, is Lorenzi trying to tell us how our nowadays, because we are so have deprived ourselves of spirituality, how we, being very material, rationalistic, etc., are left only with hedonistic pleasures to justify life. If life is to finish like this with that decay of the body, but if it were this, he would have made a special comment. There is nothing like this. And so that I don't leave you with the impression that it's just a very negative show, there are some positive parts of it, and our actors were very happy to work with him, because I may be wrong, and there is a Bulgarian among us, Aglika, who can, she's an excellent critic living in Cluj, who can correct me if I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that our actors at the National, for the first time, were given the opportunity to share personal stories fast to the audience, because he had this as well in the show. During the wedding actually is taking place nowadays, and they, between the toasts to the newlywed or fius and eredice, they turn aside to the audience and they tell their own stories connected with weddings. Further on, they do the same connected with death. And the actors were obviously delighted to be able to do this. And the audience too, most of the audience got enlivened then, although some people, of course, didn't like it. And of course, they may have not liked it because it was one of the many things in this show which did not stick together. But the actors were really good, and especially in rendering the texts of Omer and the many other texts which Lorenzi, also there was manyness in the text. Everything connected with Orpheus was there, including music by Gluck, everything, and the actors sang very well. So these are very good points, but this does not, nothing sticks together. Of course, one can say, but the topic of death. Well, yes, the topic of death, but the death, if it's as in the Iliad, a point of view towards life, not an abrupt end of life and rotting of the body. And I was quite astonished to see some shows also in Bitev and in Pilsen that display too much or talk about too much physiology. If you allow me to give some examples, for instance, in Bitev, there was this show by a famous, I have to see the name, Nina Kranjic or something, Nina Kranjic, I think it was, Slovenian director, whose show was called Solo. She was a very good actress, as I could see. It was about herself. And it was, in this show, we saw that she's a good actress. We saw that she's very talented. But again, there was one detail which struck me as being totally insufficiently motivated and totally unnecessary. She told a story how she went together to the theater with Peter Stein, the great director Peter Stein. And they, going to the theater, dropped by in a cafe, and there they had cookies, obviously with drugs. And when they went to the theater, she felt, the show started, and she started feeling a very bad smell. Obviously, somebody have defecated in his pants. And she realized, she's telling us this, and she realized that this was her company, and she thought it's because of the drugs. Then she realized it was not him, it was her, because the smell was not coming from him, but from her. And then when the show finished, she realized that everything was hallucinations, drug-induced. I mean, well, you can say this just when you have some friends, etc. But to take our time to tell us such stories which do not contribute anything to that theater, I mean, this is again an accent on physiology, which is not working in favor of the theater. And when I was watching 887 by Robert Lupaș, which you saw in Craiova, I was watching it for the nth time in Pilsen. I was thinking about what is happening in terms of, just to compare it with Solo. It's also about the creator. But in solo, this director needed 3 more people on stage to talk about her. And they even recited her CV there in front of her. Robert Lepage didn't need anybody else. Yes, he's a master of multimedia and everything. But what we learned from his show was we kind of got acquainted with all these people around him, with his family, with everybody in the block where he lived, with the society in the 60s in Quebec. We learned very little about things with anything else but Nina in her show. So I'm thinking if this rationalism, this hyper-individualism is actually depriving even theater makers from, is kind of preventing them from getting into discussing, putting on stage matters of the soul. Rather than that, it kind of makes them go into more to the territory of the body, which is rather limited. The unlimited is the other thing, the matters of the soul, and that reminded me of something which British critic. I love this quote, and I have been quoting it everywhere. So if somebody of you have heard me quote it, please excuse me, but Alastair McCauley said in 1996, I sometimes suspect that we're moving into the next dark age. Our cultural criteria are getting blurred in all kinds of ways. Classicism, which flourished up to Stravinsky and Balanchine, has become an endangered species. Political correctness prevails. Our sense of humanity and our sense of rhythm are getting coarse. I think culture is at stake. If you don't stick up for what you think is a part of civilization, barbarism of one form or another will creep in. And when I look at some ironic postmodern productions, I feel the next dark age has already begun. I think it's coarsening of our sensitivity to me. And so I wanted to tell you all this, especially about Orpheus, and share with you this. I'm really worried about this physiology aspiring to take center stage, because in Orpheus, the scene about the rotting of the corpse is not just something. The poster is the dead face of Eurydice with her eye being opened by somebody who wanted to check if she is dead. Obviously, this is one of the very important culminations. So this is something which I think is not in favor of creation of that kind of entanglement of imaginations. So this is what I wanted to share with you.
So as a follow-up, do you believe that this is a tendency in Eastern European theater? You see it?
I don't. You know what? I don't. It's not a new tendency. What I want to also to underline. Just I wanted to make a break so that it doesn't appear that I talk so long. But again, in Bitev, it's not, you see, I'm not at all against physiology on stage at all, but against it being there insufficiently motivated. Again, in Bitev, there was a brilliant show, Love, which is done by the National Theatre in London, and I think Birmingham Theatre, Repertory Theatre. Has it been in Romania?
No.
It takes place in a shelter, a jobless shelter, and very appropriately, it was staged in a warehouse very far away from the center. We went to the port, at the end of the port, so you had a feeling you go outside of society to some kind of outcasts. And there you see, you witness the life of several people who inhabit an apartment, a shared apartment for jobless people. In one room, there is an elderly mother who is with a cane and her jobless son. In another room, there is a family of 4, 2 children, father and the mother is very pregnant, and other people. They have one bathroom. one bathroom and restroom at one. And there is you have the palpable feeling of tension in this apartment. Everybody is like hedgehogs, like this, but this is the aura. And we follow naturalistically their life there. At the end of the second hour, what happens is that and of course the bathroom is the apple of discord because everybody has to wait, etc. And at the end of the second hour, the elderly woman goes towards the bathroom, but she has an accident. I mean, she couldn't hold herself and she defecated in her pants. Obviously, not only there and on the floor, of course, this is theatrical. And the woman who is pregnant goes there to clean it, shouting all the time at the son that he is not helping his mother, that he's not cleaning, that he has to clean everything, etc. He gets so scared and he runs and squats and puts his hands like this and starts yelling, "Don't beat me, don't beat me." She gets so startled. She stops yelling and she goes to him. And at this point, something happens. The whole tension evaporates. She starts caressing him and says, "I'm not gonna hit you. Don't get so worried. I'm not gonna hit you." She starts consoling him. So, and then he gets up and asks, at the end, even she lets him listen to the baby, touch her tummy to feel her baby. And you feel that this defecating accident actually plays the role of a catalyst, which brings about a chain of events which have nothing to do with the physical. They have a lot to do with the matters of the soul. And these people all of a sudden stop being against each other. They realize that they are on the one side of the barricade. They have one and the same problems, and they do not need to fight against each other. So, I mean, I'm not against like a dogma, not put physiology, but when it is insufficiently motivated, when theater doesn't get anything richer from it, why would we have it? And I don't think it's a new tendency. On the whole, I have seen a lot of this everywhere, but now I saw shows like this in Eastern Europe, and I was thinking I better share this with you.
Yes, thank you for doing that. Actually, to add some information, this show Love is now on Broadway. I'm now in New York, and I witnessed that it has a great success here. I haven't seen it yet, but I can witness that it's very successful everywhere. But coming back to the first example that you gave, this director that you were very sure that we have seen in Romania, and actually we didn't, Iernei Laurenții, the Slovenian director, he's Slovenian. From what I know, his shows were not in Romania. He's, of course, very well known in Europe. He's a recipient of the prestigious Europe Theatre Prize in 2017, if I'm not wrong. And this production you mentioned is very new, but you included this to come back to,
yes,
to your book. You included him in your, he's among the 20 groundbreaking directors.
Because as I said, The Dead Man Comes for His Mistress is an excellent show to me. And not by chance, it's on since 2014. It actually tells a folk story, which is reworked by a famous Slovenian poetess, Svetlana Makarovic, very beautifully. And they just sit on chairs with accordions and a guitar and a cello and tell this story, nearly without getting up. Very rarely do they get up or just talk. And as I said, they changed it into grotesque at one point. So it is very well done. And the Iliad to me is a masterpiece, really a masterpiece. I hope the Iliad goes around the world to be seen, because you have again a semicircle, actually not on the first line and not on Avancen, but a semicircle. And as I said, they don't have, he doesn't put any multimedia, nothing. They have mics in front of them. There is a narrator who goes in front and he recites the Iliad. And the main soundtrack is the tapping on the mics. It's like in the hexameter. It's incredible. And the music, which is produced by an arfa and I think a piano, the music is an extension of this sound. It's a stroke of genius, really. It's one of the very best productions which I have seen, because there is no illustration even of the killings, and that, as I said, killing both of the body and the soul. There is only one moment of illustration when there is this corpse, animal corpse, already. The dead Hector already on the lap of Priam. There, the metaphorical texture of the show kind of cracks. But I thought the Iliad was in Romania. That's
not as far as I know. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not. I don't know, and I don't see everything in Romania. But as far as I know, he was not presented here.
Yeah.
Neither were many of the others, or the other directors that you chose to present in your book. Just some of them were presented in Romania, but of course, for those who haven't seen the content of the book, there are 3 Romanians or Romanian-born directors, because it's a question still if Andrei Șerban is a Romanian theater director or is he an American one. And besides Andrei Șerban, you chose Silviu Purcărete and Janina Cărbunariu, which she's the only female director in your book. And I want to come to the principles of selections for this book that you worked with Marvin Carlson. So how did you choose these groundbreaking directors?
Well, as I have written in the foreword, I have consulted with a lot of colleagues in Eastern Europe, and of course, having seen a lot in Eastern Europe, knowing all these awards, I have underlined that now I have forgotten, but I think as many as 7 of the directors in the book are awarded with this new theater reality award, which is indicative exactly of this. And as I said already, the aim was not at all to have a national quota to represent exactly the theater of that and that country, of all these countries. Of course, it becomes clear what something of the picture, the general picture of Eastern European gets created from these features which the colleagues wrote. But this was not the goal. The goal was to present those who have really changed the face of Eastern European theater, one way or another. I always like to quote something which the late Jack Rowe of Newsweek said once, you may have never seen Picasso, or you may have never read Ulysses by James Joyce, but this has changed something. And I think it, again, it's there in that invisible world around us. Yes, and he continues, it has changed it in such a way that even those people who have not read or seen or watched the theater, etc., they have been influenced. Because I believe that we are more influenced in what we don't see than by what we see, actually. So yes, this was the way we chose them, and again there were many more, but we had to boil them down to 20, and maybe we have to do a new volume with just women.
Oh, well, maybe not just women, but some women, because that was one of my questions actually, because I read the reviews of the book, which are quite good. And one of the controversial maybe aspect of the anthology was identified by one of the critics, that wrote about it, that the volume's quite disturbing male dominance. Do we have a male dominance in Eastern European theater, or was it that the reality in the first maybe 2 decades of these 30 years?
I have to say that I don't think we have a male dominance, but well, now probably, especially in Poland, they say that some of these women who are very famous directors are really groundbreaking. But I don't think they were working more than half of this period of 30 years. Yeah, and. I think that there are splendid women directors everywhere. Not all of them are so groundbreaking, but they're great. We have also great directors here. If you don't need to be groundbreaking, you need to be great director. We have chosen to show just the groundbreaking directors, and only 20 of them.
Right.
The good thing about the book, maybe I wrote to Cristina, is that it is translated now into Spanish. It was supposed to come out by the end of January, but obviously any moment now it's coming out. And in the second half of the year, the Chinese edition is coming out. And the best piece of news, because we are now in Romania, is that there will be a Romanian edition published by the Lucian Blaga University Press in Sibiu.
Okay, good news.
And hopefully by the end of the year. Yeah.
Also,
and of course, sorry, just to continue, and there will be a Bulgarian edition as well. Of course, I forgot to say this. And Aglika, who is among us, is going to be one of the translators of the book in Bulgarian. So there will be already by the end of the year, if with God's help, if we are alive, we'll have 5 editions.
These 5 editions are not updated in any way, right? They are just the book as it is.
The Spanish and the Chinese translations, as far as I know, were done already last year, which is nearly immediately after the book, well, a year after the book came out, because it came out in June 2021, and now the Romanian and maybe now the Romanian and the Bulgarian will have new forwards. If a Romanian colleague would like to write a forward to it, and in Bulgarian also maybe a new forward, but no update. No, I'm not. As I said, I'm not a politically correct person. I don't understand this updating of books. If the author wants to update the book, okay, but updating, especially of dead authors, is beyond my understanding. And we are not dead, all of us, but I don't think it needs to be updated. It's published in 21. It says when is the original publishing date, a new anthology. It's not a canon. It's something which is presented by a book.
This is something actually very interesting that you because this is the word I'm thinking of when I see such an anthology of 20 groundbreaking directors. This is like cementing the canon.
No, it is not.
You can think of that.
It is not the 20 groundbreaking. It's 20. It's just 20 of all of them. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay. We have an hour of conversation, and I would like to involve, of course, my colleague Miruna Runcan, which is the head of the Janovics Center for Screen and Performing Arts Studies, and of course the other participants, the people who are my colleagues from UBB, from theater faculty of Babeș-Bolyai University. And I'm sure you have some questions for our guests, so please ask.
I only wanted to make a comment on the topic Kalina proposed to us in the first part of her talk. And that's because I haven't read the book, and I don't have the legitimation to ask about the book because I didn't read her yet. But the topic you introduced, it's a very interesting one, and put a person, not only a theater critic, but each person who is basically interested on theater has to think about such a topic. My comment is that this kind of let's say physiological, because you use the term physiological, centers more complex theoretical point in the relationship between the show, the theater offer, and the spectator, which is I'll please excuse me for exaggerating things, but it's in terms of example. It's I always have this feeling that some of the offers of artists nowadays, but it's not only nowadays, it used to happen in the 60s, also in the 70s, are focused on the fact that the artist wants to talk about his person, not put his person in the center of a story who could be generalized. You know, when I go to the theater, and basically, or at a performance, I am the participant as a spectator to an exchange, to a transfer. I want to be in the other, the heroes or the interpreters' shoes, you know. But this cannot be done if the center of the performance cannot be generalized. You know, it cannot make us be a part, a direct part of this kind of transfer. If the transfer just limited to the physical part, he's never complete. That was my comment. He cannot be complete because I would dare to say, okay, you are telling me the fact that you exist, and you are defecated. I'm doing the same. I exist and I'm defecating. And why am I supposed to be interested in that? I'm not supposed to be interested in that because I already have my stomach problems, you know. I don't need your stomach problems. Sorry to exaggerate. I prevented you that I'll exaggerate a little bit, but it's in my nature. Thank you. It was very interesting, and you provoked us to think about these differences between the offer and the transfer of in ourselves. When you are speaking about soul, I don't know very well what soul is, but I think it's about the importance of recognizing what the theater piece offers, and transporting myself as a spectator in your offer as an artist. not necessarily accepting it, but having the chance of being transported in it. Then when I go home, I'll decide if it was necessary or not. You know, but first of all, the path, the bridge is the one of generalization, I think. Sorry,
Thank
maybe
you.
it was a too long comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miruna. If anybody else has comments or questions, I'm afraid we didn't say what are the 20 groundbreaking directors, and I don't know if anybody has the book already, but maybe I can list them now.
Yes,
I totally hope that I don't get wrong their names, because they are from different countries, and the pronunciation is not an easy one. So Gregor Bral, he's from Poland. Janina Cărbunariu, Oliver Frilich, Alvis Hermanis, Gregor Jaina, Jan Klata, Oskaras Koršunovas, and of course some of those directors fortunately were presented in Romania. Lorenzi, we talk about him, Christian Lupa.
Just to correct you, Grzegorz Jerzina, not China.
Jerzina, thank you. Yeah, and please correct me to this one too. Jan Mikulášek. I'm so sorry. I've never seen a production of his. Alexander Morfov, that we know already because some of his productions are staged in the National Theatre in Bucharest. Necrosius, of course, that we also know. Bela Pinter, Silviu Purcărete, Arpad Schilling. I wasn't aware that he's doing theater properly anymore, but
not anymore, yeah. But he did some very important shows, yeah.
Exactly. Andrei Șerban, Daniel Spinar, and Wojimir Staniewski. I hope I got this correctly. These are the 20 groundbreaking directors. I'm just giving more information so that our colleagues or participants have an instant to ask more questions. So everyone, we also have in the chat, we have someone put a link that you can check to see more about the book, which is really good. Elisa, do you want to ask a question?
Just to mention about this, the link is the yes in WorldCat. It's as you probably know, this is the world library, one of the world's library associations, but not in, as far as I know, not in all countries there are participants in this. Yes, in spite of this, I was very happily surprised that the book is already bought by libraries in New Zealand, Canada, the Arab world as well, Vietnam, South Africa, very large area. Okay. Actually covering all the, I have not seen the book being bought by countries in South America, but I hope now the Spanish edition will reach them.
Yes, will help.
Yeah, but the Spanish edition, maybe this will be good to, for me to say that it's done by ADE, that is their major, the publisher of their major magazine, which publishes also books and distributes them to all major theater companies or theater-related universities, etc. in South America. Sorry for interrupting whoever wanted to ask a question.
No problem. So, Elisa Artene?
Yeah, yes. I'm curious how Mrs. Kalina see Andrei Șerban. I'm a great admirer of him. and which productions of him analyzed in the book.
Well, it's not in the book. It's not that it covers all productions of a certain director. Everybody who has written, all the contributors have decided viewpoint from which to present the concrete director. So the person who wrote about him, the colleague who wrote about him, is Ion Tomush from Lucien and Blaga University. So it was his point of view, and he has been telling about all his career. Well, I asked my colleagues to write feature articles which are both academic and popular, so that we can not get very much into the mire of terminology. And I myself have seen some shows by Andrei Shebran, but will never forget the show which I will never forget is Trojan Women, which I saw in Korea in the middle of the 90s. It was an incredible show. Yes, I think you have so good directors. We were wondering how to make them just 3, actually. And Janina's shows are so you can always recognize her signature style, and so topical. And of course, Porcuretti as well. I mean, these are so original theater makers who have really made a big change.
Yes, and they represent 3 different generations, which is really good. So, and in fact, giving the content of the book, Romanian directors are well represented in the book, as opposed to other countries in the area. Okay.
Yeah, and I have to say that the fact that a director is included there, that does not mean that I'm how to say 100% an ardent devotee of this director, because I can make a difference. I can really differentiate the ups and downs of, for instance, somebody has been very instrumental for installing, in quotes, some kind of theater on the stages of Eastern Europe, but then he may have been in a downwards development, or he may have been indulging in some kind of a trade. For instance, Oliver Frljić, I very much liked what he did in the beginning. It was really very, very mighty, very impactful. What he's been doing during the last years, what I saw in some before the pandemics, made me don't want to see a lot of his shows. But of course, I'm gonna go and see if he has gone back to his core, because he's very talented. But in a way, he has succumbed to the temptation of shocking people, or getting that kind of fame.
The Theater of Provocation, like the name of the chapter dedicated to Oliver Frljić is titled. Okay, what other questions do you have for our guest?
Maybe there are no more questions and we can finish.
No, technology is sometimes difficult. Cassandra Boulder, please.
Hello, it is very nice to meet you, first of all. It's an honor to be able to participate in this conference. Thank you very much, Kalina Stefanova, for, first of all, for the task of rethinking some differences between theater and cinema, and the role of theater and the ontology, of theater. I think it's a question that came a lot during the pandemic period and afterwards. It's also a question in South America, and especially in Buenos Aires, a group of theater people are rethinking and discussing a lot about the ontology of theater. So it's good to see that in our region as well. And the second comment, I'm looking forward to reading your last book. It's good that it's in Spanish as well, so that you can travel more, and 20 of the very good breaking directors from our region can be known in more parts of the world. And so these were the comments on the presentation, on your presentation. And now the question would be, it was very interesting, your great description now of this element of shock now, of the presence of the too much physiology in the theater in the Eastern Europe nowadays. I'm curious what other elements struck your attention in the, I'm sorry for the little participant that wants to participate as well.
Don't worry about it.
So that will be the question. I don't know if you could hear it, if you could understand what other elements struck your attention in the last year festival, for example, in which you participated. Thank you.
Just in the last year or on the whole?
Lately.
Yeah.
No. Like this one that you presented, that struck your attention. Maybe another one. I'm curious to
By the
know
way,
from you.
the book, thank you very much for the comment. The book was presented last year by one of the contributors, Tomasz Wisniewski, in Brasilia, because his festival in between, which is in Gdansk, he started doing some kind of traveling editions of this festival, and one of the editions was in Brasilia, in Gaia. I may be not pronouncing correctly, but he presented that the book, so it's already been there among theater makers in South America. As for the other tendencies, well, I think we have such rich theater in Eastern Europe. What I very much like in our theater is that kind of metaphorical language. I'm not talking about the Aesopian language we used to use before 1989, but I'm talking about the metaphors, that kind of metaphorical language, which could be very diverse. It could be in the hands of Necrosius, the late Necrosius. It was such kind of language which you would never be able to think that it's done by somebody else. No, then Silvio Pocuret, then the way this metaphorical language is being used for rendering of the classics is incredible. Actually, one of the most brilliant productions of Hamlet was done by this Daniel Spinner of the Czech Republic. What kind of a metaphorical language he used, and very contemporary, because he's from the young generations. That speaks to everybody. For instance, there, and I don't mean that this is the biggest thing in the show, but for instance, there, the father appears when Hamlet and Horatio smoke drugs, and he kind of gets possessed by the father. And we don't see him. He gets some kind of in a trance and gets possessed and writes on a mirror his message. I mean, this, you see, this is again kind of something which could be used for very well motivated and thinly motivated or not motivated at all, but it was used for a very strong effect. And he changed the end of the Hamlet without changing the end of the Hamlet, because all the words are spoken, but Hamlet does not perpetrate any killing. He is aside. He just listens to the dialogue which happens in the last scene. What is that? An incredible metaphor. And everybody from the court was, have you seen this show? Maybe I'm talking about show which you have already seen. All the rest of the court were in something like an elevator, which is, it's not an elevator, it is a glass case like in a museum, because everything was in glass cases there. And everybody is there just standing, and the words are pronounced, and he does not take part in this. He's already in the other world without being although being alive still. And also he made some kind of great changes in the texture of the play without in effect changing its essence and making it very modern. That kind of metaphorical language, and that kind of it's not the freedom which is being abused. We have two words for freedom in Bulgaria: freedom, which is real freedom, and the other one is it's svoboda, the other one is slobodia, the other one is abuse of freedom. I mean, without abusing the text, to be able to present it and make it very, very topical. It's I think this is something which we do very well in Eastern Europe. Not that directors in other parts of the world do not do it, they do it in another way, but this kind of special language which can be seen on our stages is distinguishable.
Thank you for the answer. Are there any other questions? Olivia?
Which could possibly apply maybe just to Bulgarian theater or maybe to Eastern European theater. I'm wondering if, according to you, of course, it's your subjective perspective, there is a visible difference, let's say, in the repertoire / aesthetical directions of mainstream theaters as opposed to smaller companies, what we call independent theaters. I'm wondering if you see a very stark difference, let's say, because I assume that most of the directors that are discussed in the book, some of the names I recognize, some names I don't recognize, but they are directors that have built their careers working in big theaters, let's say. So they have somehow reached a stardom level. So maybe, yeah. So I'm wondering if it's, how is it for us, for critics or for theater people in general to, how could we maybe observe lesser known or maybe less ambitious projects in a way, because they have not had the opportunity of being brought to fruition in a way. So I hope that I'm coherent. Yeah, so basically the question would be, is there a very clear difference that you see between the mainstream, the national theaters, let's say between the national theaters and the more grassroots level of independent theater?
Thank you for the question, Olivia. Well, we have quite a lot already independent theater, but not so many venues. But now we have a huge new venue which was created during the last years, where rather predominantly independent theater takes place. But a lot of directors who have been working in the so-called independent sphere, for instance, I would say that some of them get invited by the main theaters to direct. So to me, as a critic, I would never apply double criteria. I would apply one and the same criteria, because the big theaters can give you more money for sets, more money for costumes, but to me, it's the essence of the theater which is important. And in a small place, you can see wonderful show. I will never forget the shows which I have seen in pub theaters in London, in premises which are so small, and the inventiveness is so incredible. That kind of imagination which transforms a small room into, for instance, I remember the Cameron seen in one of the pub theaters. My goodness, it was so epical. It's such a small place. It depends on the talent of the creators. So I don't tend to so much differentiate. After all, it depends on how the show is done. What is the impact, the essence of the show. And some of these, for instance, Grzegorz Brał, which is one of really my favorite directors in the whole world, I would say. He used to work in a church, in a monastery premise in Wrocław. I mean, it's an independent company. It's not a state theater. So there is such a director inside. I think some of these directors have worked independently as well.
For certain, if I can add, Oliver Filish started independently, and Arpad Schilling, of course, that's why he stopped, actually, in a way. So there are, and Janina Carbonariu, we all know that she started in the independent theater in Romania for more than 10 years. She was active there before going on bigger stages. But to expand on this question, that I believe it's important, would you say that you noticed the hierarchy of the director working with all the other artists on a vertical level? Did you notice that it somehow was changing? Is it more horizontal now in Eastern Europe? Are there any groups creating with different methods of working than the well-known one?
Cristina, it's a very nice question. I wish I were able to answer, but these 2 years of the pandemics didn't let us travel a lot. So I really don't know. I'm curious to go to more festivals this coming year so that I could witness what is actually happening, because it's one thing to look at streamed theater, as we all know. Another thing to go there. So maybe there is something like this. I really don't know. I don't have an answer to this question.
Okay, we have another question, Ioana.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I would like to ask Kalina if you had more than 20 directors, and the ones that did not make what were they lacking? Is the question?
There is some kind of cutting. I don't know if you hear me now.
Yeah. So
yes,
yeah,
because there has been some cutting. As far as I understand, what made us choose only these 20? What the others?
No, I'm curious. Yes, I'm curious if you started with a bigger number, right? And the moment when you made the final selection, what were the other ones that were left out? What were they lacking?
Yes, I understand. Well, I don't think that they have been lacking a lot of things, but really there was it was impossible to bow down to expand the number. So that was I really cannot say that there was something which they lacked. I really cannot say this. Maybe some of them had worked very short time in these 30 years, and we went for those who have made a longer trace, or we went to some for choosing those who have become already known names at festivals, so that more people know them already. But as I said, you don't need, as I quoted this, you don't need to have seen somebody. Still, there is some kind of a influence. Really, there is not something 1 or 2, 3 to say this is what lacked, this is what lacked, what was lacking.
Kalina, if I can say some words also. Kalina, who was my professor at the Bulgarian Theater Academy, and I read the book. I also wrote an article about the book. And in the preface, Kalina was saying that those directors that she have chosen have changed her idea of theater and theatricality. And I think, Kalina, that maybe this was the line. Maybe it's everything we are choosing, our selections are something very personal. Maybe finally you've chosen 20 names of those creators who have changed your idea of theater.
Thank you very much, Aglika, for saying this, because actually I have forgotten my forward. And now you remind me that indeed, that is even the title, the life-changing theater of Eastern Europe. And I'm quoting there Orhan Pamuk, who says, the beginning of his book, New Life, I read the book one day and it changed all my life. But again, I have to underline that it's not only me who chose this. I really consulted with a lot of colleagues from Eastern Europe, all these countries, and of course we discussed it with Professor Carlson. I'm really very, very grateful. I would like to underline this for his standing by me, and for this, especially in the fight with for finding a publisher. Because I mean, it's so difficult now with all these, it's like a minefield with all this political correctness. I don't understand this.
That's another subject. It's a huge one.
We are not going to talk about it.
We are not going to discuss it tonight. Yeah. If someone else has other questions about
so just to thank Aglika again, and you have a Bulgarian critic in Romania who should be writing there. I don't know why she's not writing there.
Oh yeah, thank you. I didn't know. Thank you for commenting
really
on our posts.
No, I am writing, Kalina. I have publications in Dilema Veche, also in the local cultural review Tribuna. It's okay.
But I mean to be very active, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can be active also in Bulgaria, but I'm choosing my activities. Yeah. But I want to say something more about the book, that reading the books and the portraits of the directors, I found some coincidences in their biographies. Many of them quickly become directors of the national theaters in their countries. For example, Alexander Morfov in Bulgaria, Alvis Hermanis or Necroșus, or they created their own theaters with like-minded colleagues, and their performances are extravagant and very, very free, full of freedom. And I think that having lived their lives in the age of the Iron Curtain, these directors are ready at any moment to defend their freedom as citizens and creators. For example, we have now this case with Alexander Morfov in Bulgaria, who is in contradiction with the director, with the administrative director of the National Theatre, but it's another question. Because these directors distinguish very well the difference between freedom and, if I can say this word, unfreedom. So in their performances, they talk about themselves, about their own families or their friends, about the defeats that the totalitarian state leaves on people's destinies. And for us as Eastern Bloc viewers, every play by these directors that we saw, and I saw personally during the 90s, these performances were personified freedom for me. For example, Hamlet of Necroșus, Long Life by Alvis Hermanis, Black Land by Arpad Schilling, or Hamlet by Arpad Schilling, or Don Quixote by Alexander Morfov. So really these performances, they marked our lives of those who were theater goers and theater critics during the 90s. And I also appreciate very much not only the names of theater directors that you have chosen with Marvin Carlson, but also the authors that you invited to write about them, because they're well-known theater critics and historians, university professors and selectors. Some of them are my friends. We met at theater festivals in many countries, and we had some conversation that continued from Pilsen to Quebec and then back to Wrocław. And it was a great period. And this book brought me back to these golden years of changing the East European theaters. So I think it's a very, very important volume.
Thank you very much, Aglika. Thank you for saying all this, which reminds me to underline the fact that maybe those of you who have not seen the book, there are 2 chapters. There are 20 chapters about each of the 20 directors, but there are also 2 chapters where they answer the 2 type of questions. In one of these chapters, they talk about their artistic pedigree, whom they have admired, who has influenced their career, etc. And the other one is about contemporary theater. So what they find at stake, etc. So these 2 chapters to me are very important, and I really have to, and thank you very much for Aglika that you mentioned this. I wanted at the end to say that I really thank so much Marvin Carlson and the directors themselves, because they agreed to give their opinions. I had a long conversation with Andrei Sherman from New York. I remember he said, I'm in my pajamas and we better don't see each other now, but without the camera. So they were so kind to contribute to the book, and also a big thank you to all the great contributors who are writing, who are very good critics. They write very well.
Okay, so thank you again, Kalina, for being with us tonight. If there are no more questions, thank you for all for participating into this conversation, and we hope to for you to come back to our conversations organized by the Janovics Center for Screen and Performing Arts from Babeș-Bolyai University. Thank you again, everyone, and good night.
Thank you for the invitation again, and I hope we have a discussion after the book is published in Romania.
Oh yes, that's what I was thinking about, to be to see each other again from my point of view in a more informed
in a real space,
yeah,
not in a digital
in a real
space.
space. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
thank you very
Bye.
much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye.
Kalina. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.